if you are somebody who feels like you are addicted to food, you can't stop yourself when that craving comes in, you find yourself eating like packet after packet, or you say you're going to start eating better on Monday or in January or whenever it is, only to find yourself like halfway through the day or halfway through the week or whenever it is, you find yourself caving to these cravings because you feel like you don't have control over them. And perhaps people just keep saying to you like, try harder, try this diet, work with this PT. And maybe you think that you just need more willpower, yet you still end up in this cycle of not being able to stop yourself when it comes to eating, in particular, junk foods, right? Because that's what we tend to get addicted to. This is going to be the perfect video for you because I'm going to explain to you why it is we're addicted to food, why it is we're addicted to certain types of food like junk food, what kind of ingredients are in there that are making us addicted, but also I'm going to give you some tools so that you can better arm yourself in these situations so you know how to stop the addiction in its tracks without having to go cold turkey and like not enjoy your life and make sacrifices, right? Like we all still want to go out for dinner, we want to have the cookie, have the dessert, like eat that Halloween candy with our kids. Like you want to be able to still live your life. I'm not saying that you have to get rid of it, but if you feel like you don't have control, then I promise you this video is going to help. So first of all, I wanted to give a bit of background about myself. My name's Emma, I'm 32 years old. I have a 4-year-old son called Oscar, and I have spent my whole life battling with my weight, with my body image, and everything under the sun. So from an early age in my adolescence, I was kind of like nicknamed like the chubby one. My parents told me I had puppy fat, and so straight away I kind of identified that this person that struggles with weight. I was told certain stories by my parents that, you know, we have the fat gene, people in our family struggle to lose weight, all this stuff. And then in my teens, I discovered that if I just stopped eating, then the weight would come off. And so I really struggled with anorexia and bulimia and like purging after meals. There were moments when I would only eat 1 apple a day. So a really bad relationship with food, over exercising to the point where I like seriously damaged my back, and I like couldn't even like get up out of a chair because I was over exercising so much. To then, when I grew up, I got older, I started to overcome these obsessions, let's say, with food and with body and with diet. However, I was still finding myself, you know, drinking the booty and taking the, what were they, like the fat burners that I got off like my protein or something, not really having any understanding about the body or food or anything like that. None of this was healthy behavior. Then I got pregnant and I just piled the weight on. I probably put on like an extra 3 stone or something. I absolutely ballooned. I had swelling, you know, I was the biggest I've ever been. But it's fine when you're pregnant. Everyone's like, oh, it's just pregnancy weight, like it'll fall off when you're breastfeeding, all this kind of stuff. And then I had my son, I was breastfeeding, and I was like eating cookies at night because everyone tells you you need energy, you need calories. So I was just consuming junk food like crazy. So again, this isn't healthy. And it's not now until I'm on the other side, now that I've had the weight loss, that I can look back and see the damage it was doing. But in that moment, because I had no understanding of the types of food I should be eating, I didn't understand my glucose levels, I didn't understand my addiction to junk food, so I was just like filling this need of eating all this junk food, and then I'm absolutely exhausted from having a newborn, that it like spurs on that hunger, you know, I don't know, what do they call it, like hunger reaction in your brain, that I felt more hungry all the time because I was so exhausted. My body was trying to fuel me with energy, but then all I was doing was turning to junk food, and it's a vicious cycle again. So then not only did I not lose the baby weight, I started to put weight on. So I've always roughly been between like an 8 and a 12, like fluctuated between. Now you're talking like I'm a size 14, creeping up, some of my clothes were a size 16. And I just kept putting more and more weight on. There's photos of me from like when I had my baby, and then 2 years later, and I look maybe a little bit bigger. And I'm quite swollen, and like the weight that I have put on is quite like dimply, and my face is swollen. I will put some pictures up so you can really see what I mean. I've got bags under my eyes, I look exhausted, and when I look back at these photos, I remember in those moments, I was probably on the verge of depression. I was numbing my feelings with food. I was struggling really badly, like with parenting. I found it really difficult in the beginning. My son hasn't slept, still doesn't. We're working on it. You know, he's got some breathing problems and things, and I just really struggled. You know, I had a baby in lockdown. We didn't have a village around us during lockdown. All these things that I realized now I needed, and I was just in a really bad headspace. Then I had this kind of like moment of like, I'm done. I think there was a photo of us taken on holiday. I shared it in one of my other YouTube videos, and I was like, you know, you have that moment of like, nope, this ends here. I'm absolutely done. I started working with a PT, started to understand the body, understand calories, understand what's going on. Then during that time, I also signed up to another mindset program, because anyone that knows me, I'm obsessed with mindset. And I was like, wait a minute, if I can rewire my beliefs around food, around my body, if I could change my identity to that of a fit and healthy person, maybe this would feel easier, because I know this about business. I know this about money, relationships. I've done all the work to rewire my money beliefs and business and being seen on social media and all that kind of stuff. I have done the inner work for that. So why wasn't I doing it for my body? And I was like, right, this is it. I'm going to just go all guns blazing. I'm going to give it my all and do the mindset work at the same time. So while I was counting calories with my PT, I also was doing subliminals, meditations, tapping, rewiring, looking at my beliefs around my body, you know, things like we have the fat gene, and looking at that and rewiring that belief to something that supported me better. And I started to change my identity to that of a fit and healthy person. And now here I am, the smallest I've ever been, but also the fittest I've ever been, because I'm fueling my body. I'm a size 8, and I'm just starting to now also repair my relationship with the gym, because I had, obviously, same thing with the food. I had a really negative relationship with exercise. So now I'm starting to see it from a different point of view, because I'm now rewiring my brain for that. So I'm going to tell you how to do it. Enough about me. First of all, why are we addicted to food? There are a few things that this could be, but I want to just give you some ideas, and then you can say, okay, that sounds like me, or no, that's not me. So number one, it could be dopamine addiction. Now this can be for many different things, especially if you have ADHD or undiagnosed ADHD. You are more likely to get addicted to dopamine things, because you're looking for that very quick dopamine hit. Now the problem with dopamine is that, so dopamine is like a feel-good, happy hormone, right? The one with dopamine is that we have like healthy sources of dopamine and unhealthy sources of dopamine. So some unhealthy sources would be things like caffeine. I'm working on that one too. It would be like caffeine, junk food, scrolling on TikTok, watching too many episodes of like Netflix or whatever, shopping, overspending. So they're like negative ones. They're also like very quick dopamine hits. And the problem with the negative ones is that you need more and more and more in order to fill that dopamine kind of like meter every single time you do it. So like the first time, one episode of Netflix would have been enough. But now you need to watch 2, now 3. Now you're like up till 2 in the morning. Same thing with scrolling on TikTok. Like before, like 1 or 2 videos would have been enough. But it's almost like a drug addiction, that the next time you need more and more. And you always think the next one's going to give you a bigger hit. Same as drugs, same as like gambling, right? You're looking for that next big hit. And it's that feeling that you're craving, and you get that from junk food. So that's why like the first packet you feel it, and the second and the third. But what tends to happen is then by like the third and the fourth packet, or after the fact, so after we've spent the money, after we've stayed up till 2 in the morning, the guilt kicks in. Then we feel guilty, and then we're in this like fight or flight kind of like dysregulated nervous system again, and then we try and fill it back up with more dopamine. So then we go back to the thing that has hurt us in the first place, and it's again another vicious cycle. Now there are some healthy ways we can get dopamine, which is things like walking in nature, or hugging a friend, or just talking to a friend. It could be going to the gym, doing Pilates, doing some stretching, stroking your cat. Like there are some really healthy ways we can get dopamine, but the problem is we've become so addicted to the unhealthy ones, and they're such a quick dopamine hit in that it releases really quickly versus like a slow release, like a walk or exercise or something, that the exercise almost seems boring now. But then other things will start to seem boring. Cooking and eating a healthy meal will start to seem boring. Doing your work for your business will start to seem boring, because we're so like addicted to this thing that we've made it such a big thing. So first of all could be dopamine addiction. Now this is where doing the whole cold turkey thing, and we all do it, where we're like, that's it. I'm never going to eat junk food ever again. I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week. I'm going to eat 1,000 calories every single day. I'm not going to eat chocolate, junk food, takeaways. That's it for the whole of January. And then what happens by day 3 is we cave. And it's because you're going to go through withdrawal. Your body has gotten so used to having this dopamine addiction. So the idea is that we want to try and replace it with something else, because it's going to create like a vacuum. And this is why often when people stop smoking, they start eating, because they're just replacing that dopamine addiction with another dopamine addiction. So we want to try and replace it with something healthy. So that's number one, it could be a dopamine addiction. This whole cold turkey thing isn't really going to support you. But also, and this is why I've created a membership around it, is I want you to know that you can have healthy boundaries around it, because something also happens to our brain when we're like, that's it, I'm never going to have it ever again. What do you want? You now want it, right? Because now we're making it this thing that we can't have. So instead, I have a rule in that I'm allowed to eat chocolate every day. because it's not the chocolate that's making me gain weight. It's the fact that I'm overeating on the chocolate because I'm having packet on packet on packet. So instead, I tell myself, it's okay, Emma, you can have chocolate every single day. We're just gonna have one chocolate bar or one ice cream or whatever it might be, because actually the chocolate doesn't contain that many high calories. Like one Mars ice cream is my go-to. It's what I have in the freezer as my go-to thing, because I know I'm gonna have it every evening after I've had my meal. It's got like 114 calories in it, same as a banana. Yeah, it's not got the nutrition, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, about the ingredients. But I know every day I'm going to have that. I look forward to it. It makes me happy. I enjoy it. But I just have the one. And do you know why I'm able to just have one? Because I know I'm going to have another one tomorrow. And then what often starts to happen as well, for those of you that binge eat and you know what I'm talking about, is when I say I'm going to start again tomorrow, well, let me just pig out this evening and I'm going to eat everything under the sun this evening and then I'll start again tomorrow. But because of what's in those products and because we're over consuming the toxins and the chemicals and the glucose and the fructose that's within that junk food, is you're going to wake up the next morning, you're going to feel groggy. You're going to have brain fog. I almost feel like a little bit hungover now, because I have like gone in this like healthier lifestyle where like 80% of my diet is proper food. As in, like, it's not processed, it's not packaged. Because 80% of my diet is now proper food, that when I do over-consume on junk food, which I still do because I'm human, the next day I can really feel it in with my body. So then can you imagine trying the next day to be really strict and not have junk food at all? What's going to happen by midday is your body's going back into withdrawal. It's craving all that sugar now. It's absolutely exhausted because you're having a massive crash. Your sugar cravings are going to be through the roof. And now you are relying on willpower alone to get you through that. Now you might be able to get through the first temptation of the donut in the office, but then it's 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Now you're tired, you're feeling sluggish, like your glucose spikes have like crashed completely and you're through the floor and you're feeling so tired. Your cravings for energy, for something to put you back up, is going to be so intense that willpower doesn't matter. But also my belief around willpower is that we only have X amount of willpower, right? So if you're constantly trying to live your life through willpower alone, you're going to burn out and run out. So if in the morning you're using willpower to get up, then you're using willpower not to have the donut at work, then you're having willpower to force yourself to go to the gym, then you're having willpower not to spend money on extra clothes. Like, you're going to run out and eventually you're going to cave. And what tends to happen in that moment of like pure weakness, let's say, or like pure like I can't do this anymore, is we then over-consume the thing that we've been putting off. So either we then suddenly overspend a ton of money, or we then like over-consume and overeat. So instead, we want to kind of like set this boundary with ourselves of, I get to have chocolate every single day. It's not an all or nothing mindset. But also I am going to look for healthier ways that I can get dopamine in throughout my day, because I am going to feel some sort of withdrawal, and it's knowing that. And then if we think about what's going on within our foods, there is glucose and there is fructose, which is basically sugar, and you're going to find that in any kind of like sweet food. So this can be like sauces, it can be ketchup, it can be honey, it could be sweets, chocolate, any kind of junk food, you're going to find fructose. And the thing with like sugars, and it can be in carbs, right? So like pasta, potato and stuff. The thing with sugar is that if we are having it on its own, so let's say we're just having it outside of a meal and you're having like a bag of sweets, it's going to spike your glucose up here, and then your crash is going to be all the way down here. A really good reference to this is Glucose Goddess, and I talk about it loads also within my membership. And I talk about what the glucose spike does and what the dip does. But what the dip does in particular is it spikes your cravings. So if you're just randomly eating a packet of sweets in the afternoon at like 3 o'clock, not with anything else, it's going to do this so you feel the energy, but they're going to feel this huge crash. And it's so funny because we say this about kids all the time, you know, and we're like, oh my God, the kids are going to have a sugar rush, then they're going to have a crash. It's because they're not having anything with the fructose or with the glucose. So it's going to go straight to the bloodstream, and you're going to feel this huge spike and then this huge crash. So we want to basically be having our sweet food around our main meal. So rather than having it on its own, you're going to have your sweet food around your main meal. So that could be another reason why you feel like you have no control, is because you're experiencing this massive dip, versus if you were to just have your dessert straight after your meal, your glucose spike goes like this. And then you're less likely to have the craving here. So that's the main difference. So it could be that your glucose levels all over the place, you're having spikes throughout the day because of how you're eating your food, but also what food you're eating. Junk food in particular has a particular chemical in there that makes it harder for the brain to know that you're full. And I think there is definitely something to do with popcorn. I forget, I need to double check what the research was, but they found this chemical particular in popcorn. But in a lot of junk food, there's a certain chemical that stops your brain from knowing that you're full, so you tend to overconsume. It could be that you're having a dopamine addiction. And they're the main culprits, really. And so for a lot of us who are wanting to lose the excess weight, and we go straight to calorie counting, I found that really, really beneficial because first of all, I started to really understand like what calories were in food. But also because I was calorie counting, I was thinking really carefully about, okay, well, what food am I going to consume throughout the day? And then I started to realize, gosh, any processed food, even if it is like a processed lasagna or a processed like chicken pie or something, like although yes, it might hit my protein goals and whatever, it was still extremely high calorie versus if I was to cook the chicken fresh, have broccoli fresh and have the sweet potato fresh, like that whole meal would be like 300 calories versus like a quarter of that pie would have been 300 calories. So naturally I started to eat better foods that were fresher, and then the processed food I was eating was just like the odd ice cream bar or was like the odd chocolate bar or sweets or whatever. So naturally, I find myself like balancing my glucose naturally. And now it makes so much sense as to why the calorie counting worked for me. But this is also a reminder as to why it can be difficult to calorie count, because if you're having these glucose spikes, there were moments where I was like 5 packets deep into like a packet of, they're like mini chocolate animals. I buy them for my son. And I had eaten 5 packets in a row. And I was calorie counting and working with a PT. And I knew I had to put it in my fitness pal. I knew that I shouldn't be stood there eating them. I'm like nearly on the edge of tears because I cannot stop myself from eating them. And it doesn't matter what anybody says to me in that moment. I was not able to override what was going on up here. And so it wasn't until I learned this glucose stuff, it wasn't until I started to shift my identity of that of a fitness, like a fit and healthy person. It wasn't until I started doing the tapping and the meditating and the subliminals to rewire the beliefs I had around food, to stop myself from self-sabotaging, that the changes really took place, but also for me, so that the weight stayed off. Because sometimes as well, what would happen with me with the calorie counting is I could do it for a certain period of time, but like I said, my willpower would wear out and then I would come off the plan and then I would gain the weight back on. Whereas by making these changes and by looking at the stories I was telling myself and the way I was self-sabotaging, I have been able to keep the weight off. So now I go into a calorie deficit for a period of time. I then maintain the lower weight. I then can do a calorie deficit again and then maintain the lower weight. So I'm no longer always on a diet. For as long as I could remember, I've always been trying to lose weight. It has been unbelievably satisfying and incredible to just eat. But now, because I have the mindset and the identity and the beliefs that I'm a fit, healthy person, of course I choose the healthiest option. Of course I care about my sugar spikes. Of course I care about what damage I'm doing on the inside and what I'm consuming. I will naturally go for the better food and it feels easier. I'm not having to use willpower to force myself into choosing the better food option. Even when I'm maintaining, I will naturally just still have one chocolate bar because I have changed who I am up here. So I hope this is making sense. I have created a membership so that everything is in there. We've got all the modules, all the sections, and it's not just based around body. I've put stuff in there as well for success everywhere in life, and we're currently working on a money module as well. And you get access to me in there. So if you have any questions, there's like a Q&A section, and there's more stuff constantly being added, including all your subliminals, tapping, all that stuff, and a whole section on glucose so that you can go into this much deeper and understand the science behind it. But I really, really hope this helped, and let me know if any of this, resonated with you and if you're going to try any of the things that I've said. And yeah, you've got this.